Coming up on this edition of the Joint Podcast.
When you think about presidential powers and presidential limitations, what comes to mind?
The interesting thing is there's so many limitations on presidential power. I mean, first of all, obviously.
At the intersection of logic and truth, this is the logical lawyer, and it's that part. Exploring legal, social, and cultural issues with insight, clarity, and purpose. Truth and logic, sharp and clear. Insight and hope, we bring it here. Where truth meets logic and action. It's the logical lawyer, and it's that part.
Welcome to the Talk of the Times, a joint production of The Logical Lawyer with host Bernie Brown and the It's That Part podcast, hosted by yours truly, Jesse Lee Hammonds. And although we approach the various items and persons of interest from different backgrounds professionally, Bernie being a prosecutor and former Los Angeles, California assistant city attorney, as well as a Hall of Fame member of the John M. Langston Bar Association of Los Angeles, just to name a couple of headliners, and me, a longtime former manager of human resources and corporate assets at the Fortune 500 company AT&T, and former radio and international club jock, we have a shared commitment to clarity, logic, lawfulness, relevance, as well as truth in every fact, all brought together with real conversations amongst ourselves and with others about the times in which we have and currently live. It's the talk of the times. That evil guy in D.C., he's a mess. He's really a mess. One of the brothers in class today.
I wonder who you're talking about. Who could you be talking about?
Oh, my goodness. One of the brothers in class, as a matter of fact, after class, they shared with me that they would usually go to this particular conference in Dallas. And I'll just go ahead and say it. It was the SBC conference.
Okay.
And, it is what it is. But they didn't go this last time because.
Do you want to
go ahead.
Say that what SBC stands for? I know what it stands for, and you know what it stands for, but do you want to say it directly?
Let's see.
Maybe not, huh? Maybe not.
No, I'm not. We could. It's the Southern Baptist, conference, and because they have a long history, and they're still dealing with that history.
Yes.
It is rather deep and rather raw. So they're still dealing with that. And fast forward to 2025, as a matter of fact. A lot of members, I suspect, these members, the one that I was talking to, he said that they couldn't go. Him and his wife couldn't go because they were all trumped out. They couldn't. That was the audience that was there. Everybody was like, coming to that dinner right there, and they couldn't be a part of that. And I'll just say our pastor, I won't identify, our church or anything, but our pastor, he understood, and he's got certainly, high affiliation with them, with the organization there. But they have seemingly, and I don't know, but it just seems like they're kind of regressing a little bit there, because if they're embracing a guy like that, who, I don't know if you heard, some of the latest, that he's spewed. He said something about, this was the other day, and this is what I was talking with the gentleman about this morning. He said, I need everybody to give me $15 so God will probably let me in heaven now. If you give me $15, God will probably let me in heaven. And
wow,
it is like, and I don't know if he said that in the presence of some evangelicals or what, but whether he did or not, I'm certain that they heard it directly or heard about it. And I don't see anybody rushing to anybody's microphone to denounce that. You know,
yeah, that should have been immediately denounced. First of all, he's wealthy, so why would he need $15? And what would that have to do with his salvation? I mean, it's just wrong on so many levels.
So many.
That and totally offensive.
Totally offensive.
Yeah.
I just feel, it just about, and I was sharing this with the brother this morning. I said, you know, it just I mean, I could see him, okay, but the people that are around him that's supposed to know better, you know, just not saying anything. That's like knowing that this person is going to commit a crime, and you just stand by and let them just commit the crime. You know,
It's amazing.
or if someone asks, "Did anybody see that?" You don't say anything.
Yeah.
You know, and that kind of ties into one of the presidential power zones, I guess we would say, because there's like 3 of them. I found that when you suggested the topic there, I said, okay, that's pretty broad, and there's some nuggets in there as well. And one of the aspects of that presidential limitations is, you know, the 3, you know, zones. There is the the maximum authority zone. They consider that in zone 1, and this is when the president acts with the congressional approval on things.
Yeah, that's you're quoting from the Youngstown case.
Yeah, that Youngstown case,
right.
which is still relevant these days. Now, you know, George Bush used it. You know, George H.W. Bush used it. You know, during the Gulf War. Then there's this twilight zone. Now that's when the Congress is silent. You know, not saying anything. To my point right here, that, you know, there are a number of people that went through seminary and Bible college and, you know, even Sunday school. They know better, and they're up there in the pulpit teaching everybody how to do better and how to do this and that and the other. But yet they won't say anything to this guy.
Yeah, they keep looking the other way. And at some point, I do believe that at some point they will stop looking the other way and get to a point where they will say, enough is enough.
Well, that
He's
was
just gone too far.
That was the question I had when I was talking with this brother. What does that look like? What does enough look like? Because you know, you would think that, you know, enough was that tape of him saying he can grab women anywhere. You know, you would think.
Yeah. You would think that.
You know,
that would be logical.
Yes, I got that. That's pretty good. It is logical. You know, and the list could go on. You know, I mean, he's. I mean, you know, and I'm not trying to even, you know, judge him per se. I'm just stating facts. The facts are right there. You know, I don't have to add any salt or sugar or paprika or Old Bay to it. You know, it is what it is.
Well, Christians are supposed to be the moral compass of society. I mean, that's what Christians are supposed to be. And when they look the other way, when they think only about their own self-interest or ignore evil intent, evil design, then they're just not living up to the principles of Christianity, in my opinion.
No, I agree with that. And there's people looking at that and listening for that. It's not necessarily, what you say, but how you're living, but it's also what you say as well.
Yes.
It all matters. It really all matters because people receive information in different ways, so.
Well, he I should say, lost me when he had lost me before this, but when he said 2 Corinthians, it was like, oh, this guy's never been in church. He doesn't even know how to pronounce a book of the Bible. I mean,
That was
clear evidence, circumstantial evidence.
that's but beyond reasonable doubt. There, like this,
Anybody who's been to church knows that it's 2 Corinthians.
And nobody corrected him either.
No,
They let it ride.
yeah,
That's gospel.
yeah. I mean,
That's crazy.
yeah.
So
I mean,
go ahead.
yeah, go right ahead.
No, I was just going to lean into when you think about presidential powers and presidential limitations, what comes to mind?
Well, the interesting thing is there's so many limitations on presidential power. I mean, first of all, obviously there's the Constitution, which has all these limitations on what a president can do.
Right.
There's the balance of powers that are written into the Constitution. Congress has certain powers.
Article 1.
Courts have certain powers. And the people have certain powers, rights and powers. But it's kind of interesting because it looks like our president has figured out a way, or is figuring out ways to get around all of these powers. I mean, all of these constraints, I should say, on his powers.
And something else that came up, I'll just say in the meeting this morning, was that he's obviously, and this is based on not just the 2 Corinthians statement there, but other statements, he's obviously not necessarily, the brightest one, okay? So there's some sinister, intelligentsia, in back of him that's really actually driving a lot of this, He's just saying, yeah, because they're cooking that up back there.
I have to be honest. I've never ceased to be amazed by the man. He's Machiavellian, shall we say? He's crafty. He's cunning. He's, in my opinion, deceitful.
Yes.
But he's figured it out. I mean, he got reelected, even in the face of all of the things he's done and said. And since he's been, but here's the thing. I believe that if there were an election today, he would not be reelected at this time. His poll ratings are falling through the floor, and rightfully so. I mean, the things he's done, he really threw me a loop when he came out and said Ukraine started the war.
Oh.
I'm like, everybody in the world knows Russia started the war. How could he say that? But he said that on worldwide television and gets away with it. I mean, nobody said, wait a minute, what are you doing?
I think, the part that he's figured out or has known for a while, I think, is that what was it, 77 million or 70 million or whatever people that voted for him, either they're just as nuts as he is, or they don't care. They don't get. They might even know, because I'm certain that some of these people are doctors and lawyers and professors and all of that. So they have to know that he's lying, and that's not right and this is wrong and blah blah blah. So they must not care. And the thing that probably draws them all together on one accord to let that slide or just not, act like it didn't happen or he didn't say that is white supremacy.
Yeah, I think that is a major part of it. I think that they zero in on certain points that he states, either directly or indirectly. And as long as he's promoting those points,
yes,
they're okay with it.
Yes.
And so I think white supremacy is a major part of the background of what he is advocating.
Yep.
He does it sometimes on the down low, and sometimes it's very obvious.
Yeah.
of what's going on.
He has impunity. He has that, and I think that Nixon Ford probably laid the groundwork for the impunity part of it when he pardoned Nixon. I mean, because the walls were closing in. He had committed crimes, and he was going to be prosecuted.
Yes,
but for that pardon. But he did that, and that set precedent. and then this guy, Mr. Authoritarian, he turns that all the way up. I mean, he had some of the same people that were with Nixon, because Roger Stone, he's back in the background here. So we already know he was the dirty trickster. And so he's just, injected, him and his people have just injected that impunity thing, with steroids, especially now that they've got the Supreme Court, blessing it. So
absolutely. And I think it's an underlying current of virtually everything he does. This whole thing about, like you said, white supremacy. What's this immigration thing about? It seems like it's always being enforced against people of color.
Yes.
And it's done on a blanket scale. It's not like they're going individual by individual.
No.
They're going to areas where they know there are a lot of Hispanics and now Koreans, and they're going there, and now they're doing sweeps, blind sweeps, theoretically violating the constitutional right against unlawful detention, unlawful search, and yet they're doing this, and they're getting away with it, and it seems like you've suggested that an underlying current seems to be theoretically racism.
Yeah, I think it is. It's unfortunately, part of the fabric of this country. And uniquely so. Not that it's not that in other countries, but it's uniquely, a part of this country's fabric. And it's like a race to get back there. The number of things that are being put in place, because this that's happening now didn't just get cooked up last year. They've been cooking this, for at least a couple decades. Because the Federalist Society, the Heritage Society, and those other groups that were connected to them, I forget what they had. It was a plan, but then it morphed into what's now known as Project 2025. And I hear they're working on Project 2028 as well.
Oh no!
Which is just a continuation of things there. And I've always said it was kind of a shot in the dark there, perhaps, when I first started saying this or talking about it years ago. I think they want not only that 14th Amendment, but they want that 13th Amendment. They already have.
You think they're going after the 13th Amendment?
Yes,
abolishment of slavery. They want to reinstate slavery.
One of our guests suggested that, not too long ago, as a matter of fact. As far as, what are people waiting for? Because if they incarcerate people, they arrest them, put them in incarceration. Once they get into incarceration, what rights do they have? what right is not applicable to them? That key one. That's at 13th Amendment. They don't have, the right. They're technically relegated to being, slaves, indentured servants.
There are certain ordinances that do allow forced labor of people who have been incarcerated and convicted of certain felony convictions. So yes, and historically, if we look back years ago, soon after slavery, it was a process whereby certain southern states would have people arrested and placed in jail for like speeding or something. Not speeding, but certain offenses, minor offenses,
right?
And then use them for forced labor. So, I mean, it certainly is possible. I don't see the country going back to slavery.
I think
that
not.
There would be a massive rebellion amongst our Caucasian sympathizers. I think even they would rise up against that.
What do you think about the 14th?
Even maybe the Southern Baptist Christians would rise up against
that. No. I don't know, man. I mean,
I think they might say, wait a minute.
They might drift into nostalgia or something like, hey, that's the way it used to be. I don't know. I mean, God bless them, or excuse me, God have mercy on them. But I don't know. I just, the evil is just so deep. The country was built on a lot of that. I mean, it wasn't like they came over here and negotiated with the Indians, or anything. It's not like they, went to Africa after the Portuguese did their thing. They didn't go over there with contracts and like, hey, we can offer you this and benefits and, and a pension. No. Definitely not 40 acres and a mule, So after the fact. So, and over a period of time, there's been this concerted effort to suppress those. There's been people like yourself and myself and many others that have gotten through a lot of that. But as evident of how they treated the first and only black president that we've had, they treated him just like he was that.
Yes, many of them did. Many of them did. It reminds me of a story, because you mentioned that when I was started law school, when I was in law school, some students came to me and said, we want you to run for president of the student body. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay. And we had a open forum, like a debate. And I said, being from South Central LA, not being naive, I said, well, white people, they enslaved blacks. They took the Indians' land. They just forcefully took their lands. They put Asians in concentration camps. Mm-hmm. And I went on and on and on.
Right.
Needless to say, I did not get elected.
No. I wonder
I didn't
why.
win that election.
Actually, and that's kind of similar to the story that I got from this gentleman that I was speaking with this morning. Of a evangelical that went to one of the SBC's conferences, and no, he went to the White House. He said he went to the White House. He was a part of a delegation that went to the White House. True story. And he said the delegation that he was with was aware that he was going to ask a particular question, or some particular questions. And it's dealt with immigration. And so when they were going around the room and asking whether or not people had any questions, for the president, blah, 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 he raised his hand. And according to the brother that I was speaking with, the evangelicals that were standing around him stepped back. They stepped away from him. he still asked the question. He said he was nervous and all of that. And, because he was talking about, hey, he's, trying to, have a congregation and everything. And your guys are coming and taking my members away, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the delegation that he was with, they didn't want anything to do with that. And these are Christians. And to your point of as far as running and speaking the truth, the facts, people feel all kinds of ways about it, and it's just stunning the way people react to just evil right there. In 70 something odd million people said yes, we want that kind of guy in office.
Yeah, they certainly did. And, ultimately it's a question that everybody has to ask of themselves. It's a question where you have to ask yourself, what do I stand for? Do I stand for what's right? Or do I stand for just my own personal interest? Do I stand for justice and truth and what's right, what's morally right? Or do I just say, oh no, I'm just gonna stand for what helps me, what benefits me? And every person has to answer that question. And fortunately, a lot of people answer it in the affirmative. That is, they say, no, I'm going to stand up for what's right. I'm going to stand up for what's just. I'm going to stand up for what's moral. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. And so fortunately, there are not a lot of people like that. Unfortunately, there are many that are not.
Thus, the conversation about these presidential powers and limitations there. So many presidents, we've had 47 of them. Some of them couple of times in, and this one stands out. I mean, yes, we had Nixon, in his situation there. And many, wanted to actually accuse Obama of similar, testing of that limitation there. However, I would argue that he did what he had to do because Congress would not act. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was a concentrated effort, to kill anything that he was trying to do that was good. Mm-hmm. Anything,
Yes, sir.
In fact, if he was trying some of the things that the current one is trying right now and doing right now, there would be people with pitchforks and fire on the sticks, in the front yard of the White House, and worse,
when you look at it with regard to the limitations on presidential power, presidential power is supposedly contained through a separation of powers. That is the power of the Congress, the U.S. Congress, and the power of the courts. And technically also included is the power of the people with regard to their vote. Now, when either sector of that particular, of those separations of power, when any segment doesn't fulfill its obligation, its moral obligation, then the country suffers. So what we're seeing right now is Congress just giving up their power virtually.
Yep.
What we see is the president exercising authority, which is designated to Congress. The Constitution designates certain powers to Congress. And certainly Congress seems to just be kind of rolling over and allowing him to execute, do things that he's not authorized to do. And he stacked the courts. An interesting thing, because judicial appointments, federal judicial appointments, are lifetime appointments. And so that means that he can't just remove a federal judge, an Article III judge. Mm-hmm. So they're there for life. And in theory, or in law, they could rule against him. And many federal judges have.
Yep.
But the Supreme Court seems to be supporting him in a lot of his activities. And that is, once again, they are supposedly a stopgap.
Yeah.
They are there to protect democracy and to protect the Constitution, to make sure the president doesn't overstep his bounds. And I don't necessarily agree with a lot of things they've done or are doing, but I hope that they will step in. And I believe that if it gets to a certain point, they will step in. They will stop a dictatorship. I believe they will do that if it gets to that point. And many people believe that the president is testing the grounds to see just how far he can go.
Well, see, the thing with that, and I hope that they can do that, but like many of the other courts, they don't really have an enforcement mechanism.
Yes.
I mean, and he's lining up his chess pieces, around all of that. And I don't, there's probably some indicators there or whatever, but I don't have hard evidence. But it seems like it has to be a conspiracy going on here, because everybody's falling in line way too nicely there, to allow this and that to go on. Maybe they'll lose the case here, lose the case there, or whatever, but they're not deterred, from, running their plays, running the plan there. And they're not worried. If they were worried, I think they'd be acting a lot differently, but they know that ultimately, they say the court says no, then what?
Yeah. I think to a large degree, the Supreme Court at least philosophically agrees with what he's doing.
Yes.
And your point is well taken that courts don't have a military.
Nope.
He's technically the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And he's using that. Now, technically, he cannot wage war. Only Congress can wage war.
Right.
But we see him now using his power as commander-in-chief in ways that we've virtually never seen before. I mean, sending troops into cities that don't want them. The cities are saying, we don't want them. Our crime rate is going down. We don't need them. And he's sending troops into those cities, which it appears as though maybe he's just trying to flex his muscle or test the boundaries of his authority.
I think it's the test.
But I don't believe, if his true motivation is to stop crime in the major cities, unfortunately, I don't believe it's going to work. It will work temporarily. When you have a bunch of military, troops standing on the corner, then your everyday burglar is going to say, "Oh, well, I'll just wait until they leave."
Right.
But you can't keep them there forever.
No.
At some point, they have to go protect the nation, and you don't have enough of them. So as soon as they leave, the criminals will come back. So that's why it's better to support local law enforcement with funds and support. Because they are in a position to provide long-term protection against criminal activity, as opposed to just a short-term temporary fix.
Exactly. Now, because in local law enforcement, that's another interesting story as far as their origins go, as far as catching the runaway slaves and all of that. But then, gradually getting into other more civic, minded, activities and everything. To your point, being a permanent presence there. I think, and there's many have said the same thing. There's seems to be or appears to be a real desire to normalize seeing these soldiers, and people in uniform on corners and everything. And I mentioned that in one of our other podcasts that I've actually seen that in action down in the Philippines. I mean, they were just everywhere, and they were permanent fixtures. And I don't know what the crime rate or anything like that was down in the Philippines at the time. There, a lot of things were corrupt anyway. It still is, but to normalize that, does something to a psyche. To know that, okay, we are not free. And that's the talk of the times. On behalf of the co-host, Bernie Brown, we thank you for listening, and we hope it compels you into action or triggers some mindful thought about the times in which we live. We also invite you to check out the logical lawyer, Bernie Brown, and the It's That Part podcast with yours truly, Jesse Lee Hammonds, wherever you listen to your podcast. And for even more Bernie, check out his book on Amazon, A Prosecutor's Analysis of Personal Supernatural Experiences, which is a collection of fascinating stories awaiting your verdict of fact, fiction, fabrication, or fantasy. You decide. You can also connect with Bernie on his website, thelogicalattorney.me. That's thelogicalattorney.me, and connect with me at itsthatpart.com, where you can also access both podcasts. And now you've got it. It's the talk of the times.
At the intersection of logic and truth, this is the logical lawyer, and it's that part. Exploring legal, social, and cultural issues with insight, clarity, and purpose. Truth and logic, sharp and clear. Insight and hope, we bring it here. Where truth meets logic and action.